Welcome back to That Rugby Podcast. You're joined by myself, Luke, and my co-host, Hughesy, hosted by the Sport Booth. Hughesy, it's been an interesting kind of week and a bit of sport. Like, there's been a lot of news headlines with, especially in Southern Hemisphere realm, with a lack of sport being played or rugby being played, should I say.
It's been a good off-season time. Like, all the news that's come out has been your typical off-season stuff: signings, re-signings, rule changes, and all this sort of stuff. There has been some rugby. Is worth mentioning. The Sevens tournament happened over in Dubai. The Aussie women took out the victory there. So something for me to hang my hat on. Yay!
Yeah. I was like, you're grasping here now. No, they did. And again, by far the strongest Australian team out there at the moment is that women's sevens team, and they dominated that final enough to beat my New Zealanders. And then South Africa took out the men's tournament against Argentina, where our men came third. I love this new seven setup where both men and women played at the same time. Less teams, more action. And then from what I've read and from what I'm led to believe, it's like the top 8 qualify for the final series in Madrid. So, like, throughout this whole tournament, it all comes down to what happens in Madrid, which I actually quite like. Like, as much as I love tournament, I love that there is a goal at the end with one massive tournament. So, I might have to take myself to Madrid just to see that, since I'm close enough compared to you.
Yeah, so. You need some other. You need a reason to visit Madrid. You just why would you just go to Spain? You definitely need a reason to visit.
Totally. But I wanted to get onto one point, jumping across from the sevens onto one point that's going to be close to your heart at least, tackle height in Australian rugby. Now, I want to hear your opinion first, just purely because I've now played in England where the tackle height has been adjusted. So I want to hear what your opinion is, and I can kind of give my version.
Yeah. So are they just going... I don't know the full details of this. I did see the news about this. Are they doing it in a staged approach, or is it just going to be everyone below shoot shield level, I think, is going to be tackling, is going to have the tackle zone lowered?
I believe so. From what I read, that's what I got out of it. I may have misread a quote somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, this might just be, I'm very keen to hear what you think of it, having gone from the Australian rugby system to the English rugby system in the space, under 12 months, under 6 months even. But for me, I would like to see it staged where it starts in the youth competitions and then every year the age level for it gets upped. So that way you're introducing this at a young level and you're not trying to get 30, 40-year-old blokes who've been playing rugby one way their entire life to try and change their habits overnight. That might just be me really shooting for the lowest common denominator and not giving enough credit where it's due to community rugby players. So that's probably where I think a lot of the negative backlash is coming from, is that people are like, I've been playing this game this way for this many years. Now you want us to completely change what we're doing, overnight, basically. So I don't have an issue with it. I think as long as, and it seems to be that this is going to become the international standard at all levels of rugby. That for this many different national unions implementing this, to me, suggests this is going to become the international standard at some point. So it's better to start working your way towards that now, and eventually everyone's going to be affected by it. So may as well get used to it now.
Yeah, interesting, and I like the approach of, as I've always said, these guys have been learning to play. Even the professionals have been learning to play a certain way to try and teach them out of it in 6 months or whatever it is, and 2 months and 1 month is just impossible. Example being myself included in that. As I've come over to England, I'm a grapple tackler. I hate a chop. Never loved a chop. Don't like to chop people. I like to go high. Get the ball, try and steal the ball type thing like that. So I've been penalised a few times over here. Typical back, doesn't want to make a tackle. And I even got to the point where I penalised one time where I'm grabbing the player and his elbows have knocked me in the chin. So, like, again, he's run up, I've run up, and I've been penalised for a high tackle when he's made contact with my head. All I've done is hit body to body. So I go, there's levels to this where I go, this just makes no sense. And it still happens in rugby. There was a tackle on the weekend that, must have just been above the sternum. And you go, how's that a fucking penalty? Like, how have we won a penalty there? And the issue I have is it stops the game. It then gives a penalty, slows down the game, means less time of ball in play, which again is what rugby's struggling with at the moment. So I kind of go, look, there's all these issues that come with it. I totally understand head contact, head injuries, all of that. Like, we've got to get rid of them. But I've had three head contact, not injuries, but like I cut my head open, broke my nose, and then had a lump on my head. So 2 of them came from being at the bottom of a ruck. So not even to do with the tackle. And then the third one came from me chopping and getting my head on the wrong side of the tackler. So went in, got my head on the wrong side, and got a knock to the head. And I go, none of the points when I'm a notorious high tackler have I ever felt unsafe going in high, but I feel unsafe going in low, especially because I have, again, I have zero trust in my left shoulder. If anyone who's facing me is watching this, just sidestep onto my left shoulder because I can't make a tackle to save myself with my left shoulder. So I will do whatever I can to put myself on my right shoulder, even if that is to put my head at a detrimental place. Now, you're saying, Luke, you should learn, I should teach that out of me. But again, I'm now just about to be 30 years old. I am not teaching that out of me. I'm saving myself like my left shoulder when I'm old, I'll be fine. I'll be able to lift things. I'll be able to, do everything. My right shoulder is going to be bummed, and I've accepted that. But I go, nothing scares me more than going, I have to chop someone. They're on my left side. I'm just flying in with my head and my shoulder to make sure I make contact. I would rather say, actually, I'll go up a bit higher where I can get my full body onto it, and then I trust my left shoulder a little bit more.
Yeah, my worst head injury I've ever suffered. So I've had a couple of head injuries from rugby. One of them during a game where I had a minor break of my nose, not bad. Like, you can see it's not too out of shape. There's just a little bump there. It was something from a line out. I don't remember if someone like sort of turned and whacked me with their shoulder or if it was an elbow or something, but it was not a tackle, right? That's not the worst one I've ever had. The worst head injury I've ever had, where I suffered a concussion, where I was knocked out. I was out cold for a few seconds and I dislocated my jaw, was done in training. And it was not a tackling drill. What it was there's the classic drill where you have just your line and you're passing it down the line, teach people to run on the ball. Right? This is high school rugby drill, right? This is opens level. I'm in year 11 and we're doing combined year 11, year 12. This young coach has a brilliant idea to teach us to run straight lines. What he would do is have 2 lines opposing each other and you run into the gaps, right? So you run straight, otherwise you're going to run into someone else. Now, I ran a straight line. The year 12, 6 foot, whatever, second rower opposite me didn't run straight. So I've got the ball, I've passed, I've looked up, I've seen his elbow. Then it's 3 seconds later, I'm on the ground and the sky is green. And everything that's supposed to be blue has turned green for me. This completely true story. Was hospitalized and everything. And then my jaw was off to the side and I couldn't speak properly. The same bright spot coach decided to let me walk back to school unaccompanied, where I was swiftly driven to hospital. Safe to say he did not coach much long beyond that, and is the reason why that school now has a head injury policy.
Can I just say,
it was not a tackling drill.
It's not surprising that it was a lock as well. We've constantly talked about the lack of air they get to those heads, because that does not surprise me at all. But yes, continue. Not even a tackling drill, not a live game scenario, right? So, I've suffered a lot of other injuries in games. In fact, I've had broken ribs twice during games, right? So, admittedly, the second time was because I rushed back from the first time. But you suffer all sorts of injuries. The only other concussion I've ever suffered, I got while I was playing a game of touch football. That's right, touch football, where the ex-league player decided to stop me catching a ball by running into me and concussing me. So it's like head injuries are definitely a problem. We're not trying to minimize it, and we're huge on player safety in this podcast. We're always preaching player safety. And I do think this tackling rule is a good idea, but I think it needs to be implemented properly from the youth competitions, then leading into the senior competitions, And I think equally as players need to be educated about it,
referees need to as well, because just what you're describing to me, it's like you need to. It's almost like, every so often NRL refs get their bees in a bonnet about something. About a couple of years ago, there was the high tackle thing where everyone was just getting red carded left, right, and center. Like it was just like any kind of contact like this, red card. And it's almost like that. It's almost like a huge overreaction, and we need to swing back to a considered medium. Like there's got to be reasonableness in this, and it's like, it's such a gray area. It's such a judgment call there that I think you can, because you have lowered the height so significantly, you can err on the side of letting it play through, because it's not like, when the tackle height was up around here, there was very little room for error. It was pretty clear cut, hit him on the head, gone, right? But here, because you're on the sternum, this is not about, like, if you hit someone up here, you're not going to concuss them, okay? Unless you're driving them into the turf. If you hit someone here, you're not doing significant injury barring a freak accident, right? So you can probably let something being up around here above at the top of the sternum, above the sternum, you can probably let that go if it's a borderline or margin call. You can use that judgment. Yeah. And that's where I think it's probably getting a lot of the negative reaction, is people are worried, and probably rightly so, that there's going to be too much of a reaction. It's going to really, as you said, it slows down the game, kills time, silly penalties, all the things about rugby union that we don't like. It adds more onto that pile.
Yeah, and I'd be really interested to know what the World Rugby, for their stats that they have to show that, yes, this is going to stop concussions, because apparently they've got it. So, hey, hopefully it does. But, just in my brief time, there's been still enough high tackles to say that at least the guys in my team and teams at competition around us haven't learnt yet. And there's still been enough questionable calls where you go, like, the one on the weekend, no one was up in arms in our team about it. Like, we didn't think it was a high tackle, but that's where the game was issuing. Like, I totally understand when teams know when there's a high tackle, but when, like, we weren't even like, oh, that was a high tackle, the refs just made that decision. And again, it's probably the right decision, but it's just hard. It's hard. Talking about referees, and the reason I want to talk, obviously, Wayne Barnes recently retired, and now the TMO has come out and decided to step away from rugby as well after the abuse he's copped from that Rugby World Cup final, the TMO there. Obviously, probably New Zealand fans jumping in there. Not gonna hide away from the fact that if anyone's giving that referee abuse for a final, more than likely New Zealand fans. To start off, we are better than that. So shut the fuck up. Like, again, no matter what opinion you have of the TMO, don't go message. Like, what's the point of that? Like, I don't get. We've discussed this many times. You don't get anything out of that. Yeah. He can't change what's happened. In the end, I don't think it's ever a referee or TMO's fault that we've lost what we've lost. Like, again, he's done everything that World Rugby probably wants him to do. I think the sport has a bigger issues with how TMO are being implemented at the moment. But it's, as Wayne Barnes said, he was the best TMO that is in the sport, as Wayne Barnes is the best referee we had. So we had the best TMO, the best referee. If a decision gets made wrong or that we don't agree with, chances are it's not because the TMO and referees made that decision, as much as it can be. It's because World Rugby's put them in their position to make that decision, is the way I see it.
You exactly what I had in my head is exactly it, Like, I think when we've debated the TMO, especially around this World Cup final where we haven't liked it, and I thought that, maybe that the call wasn't correct. It's not the TMO's fault for that. That is their job. That is what they've been put there to do. For them to not speak up in that situation would be not doing their job, right? The issue is with how it's structured, is that the fact that is their job in the first place, is the fact that World Rugby has given them that job description, given them that scope of work, and said, this is what you're doing. That's why we have the issue with it, is the structure of it, not the individuals themselves. A few weeks ago in our local touch footy competition, we didn't have a referee for a game. So I refereed for a game. Now, this is just a simple 7-on-7 touch football competition. It is bloody hard. It is bloody hard to referee, to be running that much, to have your eyes on so many different parts of the game, especially, I didn't have the benefits of touchies, TMOs, or anything like that. It's just, pure community touch footy kind of thing, right? Trying to keep your eyes on all that. You're having to make so many split-second decisions about so many different things. Like, I remember one of our podcasts, we said, we heard a stat about how many decisions a referee has to make a game. Like, it's thousands of decisions, and that's 100% right. They're making thousands of decisions a game, and if they might get one wrong, and that's all that will get amplified. If you had any job where you had a 99.9% success rate at whatever you did, you would be considered outstanding. You would be considered, wow, best service provider, So that for me, really, I hadn't done any proper refereeing sort of before that. And even then, that's not real proper refereeing, but for refereeing in a competition, I guess, as informal as touch football is, and to have it be a fair and balanced game, to be making the decisions as well as combating your own exhaustion is incredible mental effort. So I can only imagine what Rugby World Cup final referees are having to deal with, how many decisions having to make, as well as the TMO, right? As the TMO, you are reviewing that footage with, for us it might seem like ages, but I'm sure for them it's not that much time. It's a couple of minutes to look at stuff, and especially you've got to look at that stuff, and you can't spend too long on it because you've got to then keep watching the rest of the game. You've got to make however many decisions on that. You've got to review every part of that, look at all 30 players on the field, make your decisions about that, and then communicate that and get and make a ruling, or get the referee to make a ruling. So they made a call, but that's because that was their job to make that call, right? They followed the rules I don't think anyone would say that they blatantly disregarded the rules. They blatantly didn't follow the rules. I think we could say, maybe their judgment was slightly off. We can have a difference of opinion about that.
Interpretation.
But interpretation. But an interpretation of a rule is not a reason to send death threats to someone, to say you're going to hunt them down, to feel like you need to warn your children's school that they might be in harm's way. Like, that's very fucked up. That's a terrible thing to have to deal with.
Yeah, it's exactly as you said as well. Like, imagine getting 99% of your job right and still getting death threats and worrying about your kids. Like, there is no doubt he's got a very clear reason to step down. Like, that is not, you just sit there and you go, why am I doing this? Like, what is the point? Yeah. Like, if everyone else can enjoy, on Instagram, being on Instagram with their families and this and that, and I have to worry about these messages I'm getting, who, before this game, this dickhead didn't know me, still will probably wake up the next day hungover regretting his decision to message me, but has messaged me his thoughts at the time and is an idiot. And again, it's just doesn't look good on the sport of rugby, especially as a New Zealander. It hurts us
it's the same with, unfortunately, it doesn't look good on sports as a whole, because there's no sport that is immune to this. Totally. I would say, thankfully, we're not soccer, because that, I feel like, is the sport where people would actually follow through on it. 100%. There's fans are just next level in that sort of stuff. So at least it's not that, but God, it could easily become that.
That's the thing. My issue is, we need to nip this in the butt before it gets to the point where someone actually does get hurt. And I think
exactly.
I know there's a referees
need accountability.
Now. Exactly. And so World Rugby, again, you've put them in this position, and you've seen your best referee and your best TMO walk away. They have to be sitting there going, like, what do we do? What's next? And I listened to a really good podcast that was passed on by my girlfriend's dad, of Ben O'Keefe talking to Dom Harvey. And this was after the Chiefs versus Crusaders final, where he got a whole lot of messages, and just the way he goes about it, it's just really interesting. So I might link that if I can find it and put it in our description. But it's just referees.
There's been, I think in rugby league, there's been some good examples of just whenever the hatred has been received to players, coaches, referees, whoever, they've swiftly acted on it, banned those people from grounds and things like that, like really done everything they can to reinforce that, hey, there are consequences to this. And that's what I think rugby needs to do as well. It's hard when it's online. When it's online vitriol and hate, it's really hard to do. But I think if you can identify these individuals, then you can work on things like bans, depending on the content of their messages and everything like that. And people have to learn that you don't have full anonymity through the internet for doing something like this. And that's a whole other debate about internet privacy laws and things like that. But nowadays, it's easy enough to identify someone on there, right or wrong. Where you can judge that for yourself. But that is the case. And if you're dumb enough to message from your own personal account with your name, photos of yourself splashed everywhere, easily identifiable marks, and you're messaging horrific stuff like that to actual people, which that's what they need to remember. These are actual people on the other end. Then you should be banned. There's no reason to do that.
100%.
If you message something like, "Oh, that was a shit call, you dickhead," whatever. I mean, you still shouldn't do that, but it's a bit more understandable. It's you can understand the thing of Steam. You message someone, "I'm going to hunt you and your kids down," then you should be banned. You should be banned from grounds and things like that, because that's totally unacceptable.
We don't want you in the sport. That's
Exactly.
100%. So look, we'll see. We'll keep touch base. Obviously, referees are such an important part of our game.
It's unfortunately a growing trend within sports as a whole, though, that I'm noticing that the more online interaction there is, everyone loves to be negative. Like you get a lot more interactions, likes, comments, whatever, from posting something negative or commenting something negative, tearing someone down, than positive content gets.
Totally.
Everyone's trying to have a funny one-liner. Everyone's trying to funnily insult someone these days to get some 15 minutes in the sun, and it's really disappointing to see. I personally, that's not what I like to see about sports at all. I hate it when opposing fans or fans of your own team like tearing stuff down, tearing players down. It's like, what's the point? Why do you watch this then? Like, just to be negative about everything? Like, for me, it's much more fun to just go out there, watch my team and enjoy it. And if we've got rival teams, enjoy them losing, but I'm not going to go post like what a loser this dickhead is. I bet his mum still gives him a bath or something weird like that. Just the random shit people come up with. Like, it's just so, that's just so strange to me. And I don't get that.
There's a time and a place for it all. And, you know, like if you do need events, do it in your group chats, do it in your, where it's a safe place for you to be able to vent. It doesn't affect anyone. It's not going anywhere. Because that's honestly like that. Again, our American football chat, you can go in on people. You've got different opinions in there, so someone can hold you in line if you do go too far. So I just sit there and go, there's a time and a place, and if you need to vent, there's places for it, but don't send messages like that to our referees who we need in the sport.
100%.
Moving on to another interesting topic. Owen Farrell has decided to take some time off from international rugby. There's been talk about his mental health, obviously, the circus that went through with the tackle and then everyone coming out against him pretty much, and him being World Rugby's number one villain for a little bit there. Now, there's two things I want to mention here. I think this will happen more and more, and I don't think this is a bad thing, especially after the pressures of a Rugby World Cup. So the Rugby World Cup is a massive event. Like, I don't think this should be looked down upon at all, that you need a break. Again, hey, we get our 28 days leave. We don't have, like, you may get a project, but no project is as big as a 4-6 week long Rugby World Cup, 8 week long Rugby World Cup, where you're playing the best teams week in, week out. We got the pressure of a nation on your shoulder. So there's nothing like that.
When millions of people know your names. Like, you might be involved in some huge corporate transaction worth billions of dollars, right? But Joe Bloggs walking down the street is not going to know who you are, right? You miss a penalty kick at the Rugby World Cup, you're going to have half the pubs in England jeering your name, you know?
Exactly.
It is totally different levels.
So, so I just think that players like this should be allowed to do it. And I'm loving that New Zealanders can go and take a sabbatical to Japan, get a little bit again, less physical games than they get in New Zealand again, because that's the thing. You've got to think, Owen Farrell's gone back and he's gone straight back into Saracens rugby. Yeah. And straight back into the harsh reality of Premiership rugby, which is just as brutally judged as the English rugby side. So you go, he hasn't had really a break since the Rugby World Cup. and then you're going to ask them to back up in the Six Nations. Like, these guys, I understand it's their job, it's their profession, but mentally he would be drained. And I just think we start to normalise this. We see it with Cody Taylor and the All Blacks. You know, he's getting on with age. Hooper, again, this is something
he's won the other year,
these players, they need to take some time off, and it should never be frowned upon from them being able to take some time off. Like, I think it's going to be part of the game is, okay, I've just had a big fucking Rugby World Cup. Give me 6 months, a year off. I'll stay in shape. I'll play club rugby, but I just want to focus on that for now.
And I think as well, I think we said it at the time as well, a lot of the stuff about the decision about him not getting a huge ban, that's not on him. That's on the judges of that to rule consistently, you know, like, because he gets treated differently, he's not inviting that different treatment. He's not demanding that different treatment. You know, that is what those judges have decided. And the fact that they decided so harshly for one player and not for him is at the judge's feet, not at Owen Farrell's feet, you know, because as rich and as influential of a rugby player as he is, it is not enough to influence that kind of thing. That would need to be like an England rugby-led thing, right? So again, you can't put it at the feet of the player, but he's the face of it, so he cops the hate, and that definitely has a role to play in it as well.
100%. And again, he's been through a tough, I would say, 12 months, and I just think this is going to be normalised. This is going to be more and more normalised. Players putting themselves in front of, you know, as much not in front of the country, but just putting themselves first, which players need to do, put themselves and their families first. As we say it with the money thing, like, if you get the opportunity to make a bag, take the bag. Like, you've got a short career. This is, you know, you're not going to be doing rugby forever. If you've got the opportunity when your mental health is struggling to take some time off, take that opportunity. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that it's the right decision. I just think we start to normalise this.
That's not just rugby players; it's every profession. You know, it's everyone.
100%. And last little point before we get on to our last couple of topics. Beauden Barrett has re-signed with the All Blacks and the Blues Rugby until 2027, so he's back for the Rugby World Cup, which is the first of a good signing. Will be interesting to see if any others join him later on down the line. What Beauden Barrett really is doing single-handedly is making sure we don't need a ghetto law, purely because he's going and he's coming back. He's going and he's coming back. And so at the moment, if he can do it, then anyone should be able to do it. Now, how big of a part he'll play in the 2027 Rugby World Cup is going to be really interesting, because Razor's got 4 years to plan, and we know Razor's pretty very methodical with his approach, and I imagine he'll already be thinking about where he's putting players and where Damien McKenzie's starting. So how far this will put Beauden Barrett back. I know not a lot of rugby players can transition from Japanese rugby back to high-level All Black Super Rugby quickly. Like, it does take time. We've seen it with many of them. So will be interesting to see how Beauden Barrett returns. But good news for New Zealand rugby, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Alrighty. Last week we mentioned our top 5 rugby teams, and Hughesy kind of pitched the idea. So I've gone with down the route this week. What we're going to discuss is the greatest rugby nations. So not just teams, like globally, who are the... I'm going to get you to start off, because I just feel like I've got a different list to you.
I'm sure you will.
So you start off, and then I will go.
I don't think there's going to be too many shocks with my list. All right. You know, as much as I would want to put Australia number 1, I can't. I'm really basing this off of number of World Cups, as well as, I guess, history of rugby and prestige, right, of international tournaments, right? And so though the star might be tarnished at the moment, if we're looking at all time, I've got to put Australia number 3. You know, 2 World Cups, first nation to ever win multiple World Cups. You know, we're in the Rugby World Cup final in 2015 as well. The Rugby World Cup final in the greatest game ever played in 2003. You know, you look at some of the historic names in world rugby history. In our top 15 of all time, we had lots of Wallabies in there as well. So for me, Australia's at number 3. Then the top 2 is interesting, but we sort of said this last World Cup would decide this anyway. And so I feel like my decision was sort of made for me. I've got New Zealand at number 2 and South Africa at number 1. I think South Africa, it's hard to not put someone other than South Africa at number one. I mean, 4 World Cups now across 4 different decades, right? You have history made there consistently top of the world, playing as one of the top teams in the world. No dips ever in their form, and consistently winning World Cups. Like South Africa is just different in a World Cup year. So for me, it's hard for me. South Africa and New Zealand very close, because New Zealand you could say the same thing, right? Multiple World Cup wins, arguably the greatest side to ever play rugby in the 2015 Grand Final, World Cup final team that won that tournament. Against a very, very good Australian side as well. Like as we discussed World Cups, that 2015 Australia side, you put them in any other World Cup, they probably take out the tournament. Consistently good, consistently playing good rugby, never really suffering any dips in form. And of some of the greatest players of all time, a lot of them are All Blacks. However, we're counting all World Cups, we're quoting all time. That does include this latest one. And that's where the difference is, by like that much, by 1 point. It's a 1 point difference between these two.
Yeah, this has gone exactly as I expected. And this is what has made me happy. And so now I'm going to say, let me cook, because I'm about to cook, all right? So I'm going to start from 1 to 3, and then I'm going to get an explanation of why there's a team missing. Okay, so 1, I've got New Zealand, all right?
Okay.
3 men's rugby World Cups, 6 women's rugby World Cups. Like, you've forgot a whole 6 here, all right? 14 men's sevens champs, 7 women's sevens champs, 6 under 20s champs, 20 the Rugby Championships and Tri-Nations champs, and obviously, to wrap it all up, 51 Bledisloe Cups, which, doesn't really matter anymore, but we'll count it. So that's 1, okay? 2, in number 2, I've got England. Now listen here. 1 Rugby World Cup obviously helps, but 2 Women Rugby World Cups and 6 runner-ups. They are the best runner-ups in the history of runner-ups, and this is why they're number 2 on my list. 3 under-20s Rugby World Cups with 6 runner-ups, 29 Six Nations, so 6 Nations, 5 Nations, and home nations all up, 4 runners-ups in the sevens men's, and 1 runner-up in the women's sevens. Number 3, Australia, 2 Rugby World Cups, Women's Rugby World Cup, the highest they've come is 3rd, which is, not a bad result. Under 20s, they've come 2nd twice and a 3rd. 4, the Rugby Championships, which is the exact same as South Africa, and South Africa has twice as many wooden spoons as Australia in the Rugby Championship and Tri-Nations. You have 3 Women's Sevens World Cups, which, as we've talked about earlier, is your best women's team at the moment, and 4 runners-up. And the way I've judged this is, you look at England's Women's Rugby World Cup, where they've had 2 wins and 6 runner-ups. They've obviously pushed the 15s game, because that's what there is, where they've only had 1 runner-up in Women's Sevens. It's the opposite for you. You've had a runner-up in Women's Rugby World Cup, or 3rd in Women's Rugby World Cup, but in sevens you've pushed that where you've succeeded. And you've got a asterisk 1 men's sevens Rugby World Cup, because New Zealand only half competed. So you're going to sit here, and every South African that follows our page is going to sit there and go, Luke hates South Africans. No, you hate women, all right? And the fact that you hate women is why you are out, okay? So the highest South Africa has come in a women's sevens competition is 12th. The highest they've come in a women's World Cup is 10th. They have 11 wooden spoons in the Rugby Championship or Tri-Nations. They are lucky that Argentina got added to the Rugby Championship, because they'd be sitting there with about 20 wooden spoons. Then they have a losing record in an individual cup between New Zealand and between Australia. So they have a record of that. Don't give me recency bias with 4 World Cups. If you just turn up for a Rugby World Cup, does not make you the greatest nation when you forget half of the sex of the world also play the sport, and you're not very good at that. And the fact that every other year, bar a Rugby World Cup, you don't care. You are not in my top 3 teams, South Africa.
All right, look, I think you make good arguments. I think you've really widened the scope compared to what I thought we were doing. Again, similar to the other week. I think you make some really good points, though. Maybe not so much about South Africa hating women. I don't know if I would necessarily sign my name next to that. Note that, Springbok fans out there. That's a very Luke statement. That's not the sports booth statement. That's a Luke Bowden statement.
I'll live and die by that. Until you get your program back up and running.
Yeah, I think they're valid points though. Like if you're considering the entire scope of rugby, we do have to consider it's not just the men's 15 game. So I think that those are some very valid points you make there. My top 3 was based off the men's 15 game, so I'm sticking by that. I think if you're looking at purely just the men's 15 game, I think my list stacks up. And you can argue that if you want, but I will stand by it for men's 15s.
I'm just checking. I said the greatest rugby nation in the run sheet. So it's
you said the greatest rugby. Yeah, look. It's
interpretation. It's an interpretation.
It's interpretation, and so I'm going to hunt you down and kill you. I know. You've omitted. You haven't misled me. You've just omitted and allowed me to wander down the wrong path,
I knew exactly what was going to happen. I've set this up and then I sat there and I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into the whole spectrum. And I know Hughesy's going to focus on 15s. It was from last week to this week. It was definitely poised. Like I set you up to do that. But you haven't failed because you've interpreted it your way and you can make a valid argument for your 3 as well when you're looking at specifically that. Yes, so South Africans, don't come after me, but you probably will anyway. My individual handle is @Bowdy010 for anyone who wants to actually come after me because I can take it. And the last point today is things we got in rugby before a new GTA game. Now, Hughesy, I don't know if you're a big GTA man, but
I used to be. I used to be very into GTA. I played a lot of GTA 5.
Good man. Yes, same here. Yeah. I must say. We're getting a new one, as everyone would have seen from the trailer. That's just come out. So GTA 5 was released in 17th of September 2013. So 10 years on, we've got a trailer, and it's not coming out for another year, 2 years at least. So what we've had since then, we've had 3 World Cups. So 2015, 2019 and 2023, South Africa winning 2 of those, New Zealand winning 1. 3 British and Irish Lions tours. So 2013 happened pre-GTA 5. But then we've had 2017, 2021, and we're going to have 2025, most likely, before that comes up. We've had someone like Bernard Foley play his first Wallabies game was after the Rugby World Cup, and potentially his last Wallabies game before GTA 5 comes out. We have had SBW play league, join union, then try sevens, then jump back to union, to jump back to league, to go into boxing, to end up in commentary, all before we've got another GTA game. We've had Ireland win the Six Nations 4 times, England win 3, Wales win twice, France win once, and there's still 2 more to come. But there are some big things that didn't happen before the GTA. So 10 years, potentially 11 or 12 years, we haven't had a decent rugby video game since Rugby 08. No. So, everyone complaining about GTA taking 10 years needs to sit back and realise that rugby players haven't had a good game since Rugby 08.
And we are crying out for it, EA Sports. We are crying out for it. That thing would fly off the fucking shelves.
World Rugby, get onto it. And lastly,
Hughezy Bowdy commentary for the game, Well, we'll do the commentary for free. We'll do it for free.
Exactly.
Just royalties and residuals.
Yep. Love that. And lastly, as Hughezy knows well, still 10 years, but you can double that because we still yet to have a Bledisloe win for the Wallabies.
Next
all
year.
of that.
It's happening next year.
Believe it into existence. Our new coach is
going to do it, whoever he is.
So yes, a lot has happened in the world of rugby since a new GTA game has come out, but a lot has still not happened, and potentially a long time for a Bledisloe win for the Wallabies. But to finish this off, get us a new rugby video game. South Africans, develop your women's nations up if you want to become the greatest rugby nation of all time. Anything else for us, Hughezy?
Go the Australian women's sevens. Repeat it in South Africa.
Yeah, Cape Town this week. So look, you've got women's sevens to watch and men's sevens rugby to watch. So get down there and watch those women's sevens because they need all the help they can get, South Africa. Alrighty, I've been Luke, that has been Hughezy, we have been That Rugby Podcast, hosted by the Sports Booth. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week. Goodbye.
Peace.